What is up, everybody? CP and SJ with you here for another week of Every Day We're Covering. Episode number 80 coming at you here as we get into the Final Four. SJ, we've been, of course, watching a lot of hoops here, and we did pretty good over the weekend as far as some of the picks we had. It's been a mixed bag before then, but I think we were not too bad the actual games in the Elite Eight round. And we finally have gotten some better finishes too. There were a couple of good games mixed in there for us.
Yeah, and then I guess didn't do much for the people that were whining about the Cinderellas, though. But I guess we already knew that they weren't going to disappear out of nowhere, so that was already a done deal. We didn't hear much complaining about that, and especially like in Florida's case, like they were flirting with it, man. They were damn near had their bags were packed, and they were calling for that flight home and trying to cancel that hotel room for the next night because they were about to be gone. But they found a way to win, and that was one of the, I guess, exciting finish depending on what side you're on. But it would have been nice to maybe see a different team in there, but we didn't get it. So I guess we'll just have to see if these top four, the best teams supposedly by the bracket, are as good as advertised when they meet up here.
Yeah, obviously we don't see this very often, and here it is. All the one seeds did survive and get to this spot. So yeah, theoretically, this is the best that the bracket could produce for us for a Final Four, according to the selection committee. So we'll see if that bears true. I will say I'm pretty upset because I would have had the Final Four perfect had Texas Tech not absolutely pissed it down their leg at the end of that game because I had them in the finals. But that was an interesting game nonetheless. And we did get a couple here over the weekend to make it a little bit more exhilarating, I guess, as we get closer now here to the final finish in this tournament. We've got a lot on our slate here for you this week as well. We're going to talk about, of course, what has happened here in these games that have been played to get us to this point. We'll also touch on a little bit what's going on with the rest of the basketball world that surrounds it. There's some other topics that have been brought up here. One story actually that's kind of related a little bit to the women's game that we've noticed, and then also a little bit about the portal and how that's all been working here lately as well. And then we will, of course, and give you a little bit of a preview of this Final Four coming up this weekend. And we also are going to get you the Sweet 16 results here of the Parched Madness. That's the important stuff we're going to get to here later. What beverage is knocking off others here as we had. Maybe we'll have a Cinderella there for you to talk about.
I mean, if you're dying of thirst, I don't think Florida is going to do much for you. But you grab a Kolsch or something or a lager, and you're sitting pretty good there. So that's what really matters. Like you said, we don't care about these number one seeds. Who wants to watch chalk? I mean, apparently everybody did after the first couple of rounds, but to me, it's a little bit stale. But we'll make do with what we have.
Yep, we'll make it work. And as we get rolling, of course, to talk about all these things, we got to have some Parched Madness stuff of our own here to get us through. We got to have some beverages to, not make sure we're not parched. And I'm going back to the well with one. I guess I got tricked by the weather, of course. This is how it goes here in the Midwest. We have a couple good days, and it turns into shit again. So it was kind of dreary here today. But I did kind of get in that spring-summer mode. This is one that I always mix in the spring and summer a little bit. That old Boulevard, Southwest Boulevard, the lager with the salt and lime. I always like this one. It's just a nice little mix in there, a little refreshing beer. So that's what I'm rolling with. SJ, what do you got over there?
Yeah, I mean that's a good one. It's hard to get that lime flavor, but they did a pretty good job on that one because when it's pre-mixed or whatever, it's kind of not always tasting authentic, or you don't get that natural flavor. But they did a good job with that because who doesn't like a little bit? Throw a fresh lime in your beer, kind of kicks up anyone. I mean, I guess I went a little bit. I went back to one of my faves there, the KC Beer Company. But you put like let's see, limited is one term they use, or a special release or something like that. I mean, of course, you get our attention right off the get go. So I had to snag this one, which does say limited. It's called the Hop Stick, and it's I guess it's it's a dry hopped German amber is what they call it. I guess alt beer. It's got to be from the Dusseldorf region. So I guess that's kind of there. That's that. I mean, did a little research because I was like, alt beer, I've heard the term, but I was like, okay, we got to get a little bit more background for those who maybe aren't as into the German style lagers as we are. But no, that's good. It's just, I mean, I guess it kind of has like your typical, your amber flavor, but it just a little bit more of that, like the name would tell you, a little bit more bite there with the hops. But it's pretty good drink there, and it's one of those. I mean, I'll try anything they make. You just one of those companies for me that you can't go wrong with.
Yeah, yeah, sounds interesting. Well, you gave me a history lesson there. I learned something too. I have seen that. Yeah, you see the copper alt on a lot of things. And what is that? But yeah, that definitely sounds like an intriguing little mixture there. So good stuff. Yeah, and then later on we'll find out what beverages are winning in our battle bracket here in Parched Madness. So that'll be fun to track down. Let's start off though here by taking a look at how things went here in this last round of games. Of course, this last weekend we had the Sweet 16 and then the Elite 8 games that follow Thursday through Sunday. And just give you a quick little, recap. And I'm not going to talk about every single game, but maybe highlight some of the ones that maybe were a little bit more interesting and fun to watch. Thursday was kind of a dud, early games at least. It wasn't much fun to watch. Alabama rolled over BYU, Florida crushed Maryland. I thought that one would be more interesting. Was not. Duke, Arizona got intriguing for a while. Arizona came back late. They got within 4 there at one point late, so they made it interesting, but you just never felt like they were going to win in that one. And then the nightcap was a good one. That Tech-Arkansas game was a good thriller. Overtime victory for Tech. That's another one, I guess. Well, you're feeling bad for Tech the next round. Round before, you're feeling a little bit bad for Arkansas because they kind of had the opportunity to hang on to the game and didn't do it. So, but that was an interesting game. I'm glad I was able to stay up for that one. I probably had dozed at some point before that, but got back up to finish off that one for the nightcap. And that was a good ball game.
I guess it would be the same for Texas Tech. You live by the comeback, you die by the comeback, I guess is one way to put it. Because they kind of played with fire there and it burned them there at least in the Elite 8. But yeah, I mean, I had a hell of a long day on Saturday, so I was right there with you. I kind of given up hope. I said, it's this one's done deal, and so I didn't even wake back up. I gave up on him because I didn't have any play on that, and it didn't matter all too much. And then wake up the next morning and say, Tech came back and won. Well, good news for that, because for me at least, I was hoping maybe get one of those 1 seeds out of there, and I figured they'd have a little bit better of a chance at it than Arkansas did, because I figured if Arkansas wins that, Florida probably rolls into the Final Four. So they definitely had were challenged there. But yeah, that was a crazy game. You don't see. I know tournament's crazy, a lot of things happen, but a comeback like that, that's actually pretty unusual, that big of a comeback when you get to this stage of the tournament. Now maybe in the first, second round, a better seed is kind of messing around or has a bad start. Team hits like 4 or 5 threes and they get up big early, and then second half starts and it all goes away. But to come that big of a deficit at that stage of the game in that part of the tournament was pretty remarkable.
Yeah, they were 16 points down halfway through that second half and came back to obviously get it to overtime and then win it. It's funny that one of the guys that I work with that sits next to me, he's got a lot of family that's from the South, and so he's actually an Arkansas fan. He follows the baseball team pretty close. So that's why he was, he's always kind of just interested in whatever they do. But he sent me a text and just said, keep calling the Hogs for me. I'm headed to bed. And I didn't look at it until it went to overtime, and I thought, oh no, he's gonna be so pissed when he wakes up. And immediately I got one the next morning. He's like, "You had one job, man. What'd you do?" And
let him down.
Didn't work out. Unfortunately, I didn't have the heart to tell him I was kind of rooting for the other thing to happen because I wanted Tech to win. But it was a fun game to watch, and I did feel bad for him. But that was a fun game. Friday, we had a couple of good ones mixed in there. Michigan State, Ole Miss got a little testy. It was 73-70. That game stayed closer than I guess I thought it would, for sure. And then Tennessee kind of rolled over Kentucky. I thought that might be closer than it was. And then on the other side of the coin, you had the one that came down to the wire that I don't think either one of us saw coming. Purdue hung with Houston. I mean, they played a pretty good game, and obviously it took a last-second shot by the Cougars to advance and win it 62-60. That was one of those where, of all the games during the tournament that I had picked, I really feel good about Houston running away with this thing, and it just never happened. It was just a pretty solid contest. I give Purdue credit.
Yeah, that was the day of like I guess the term everybody uses now. I don't really care for it, but I guess it fits in this case is the bad beats. You know, the freaking Ole Miss hits that damn half quarter at the freaking buzzer to lose by 3. They would have lost by 6. Of course, it was 3.5. Was this
Mm-hmm.
Michigan State had the line, and then that freaking if Purdue has that close, you figure it's probably going to be in the 70s. And no, it's 62-60 and 132.5 is the freaking total. So they didn't even hit over that. So that was maybe that was kind of my set my mood for the the rest of the weekend. I guess it was that was a rough day just because I mean I almost rather like never we want to win every bet we make and every play we give out. But if you don't, I don't like it. Who likes it to come down to that? Is let me know right away so I can prepare. Get my anger out and then move on to the next game. But those stick with you for a little bit. Those hooks they that's why they call them hooks for a reason. They really get into you.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, that was a little bit of a rough day for sure. We did. I will say that I felt better after Saturday. I kind of bounced back a little bit there on Saturday because obviously we both were on Tech, staying close to Florida, and obviously, honestly, they should have won the game. They just absolutely blew it. I mean, to be up, what were I think it was 11 with a little over 2 minutes to go in the game. Like unbelievable. I mean, and some of the even before that, of course, they were up for a long time. They had control of the game, and there were a couple of possessions about that 4 or 5 minute range where they came down and took an early shot, and a couple of them were long. And I'm thinking to myself, what in the hell are you doing? Like, I get it, you don't want to just play to not lose, but you can't just be idiotic either. Like you have to take some time, do your best to get a good shot, and then you want to chuck up that 3 at the end of the shot clock. Great, I don't care, but burn some clock here. They didn't do that at all.
Well, and then I mean, Florida even makes mistakes, fouling when they probably shouldn't have. But what do they go and do? Miss the front end of 2 back-to-back, 1-and-1s. It's like, well,
Yeah.
you could have made up for those, errant shot attempts if you would have just hit a free throw or two. And that's, I mean, of course, it's pressure situation and not that type of thing. But still, it's like, I mean, that's when I'm like, I just wanted them to win, but it's like, well, you kind of get what you deserve in that case when you can't make free throws and you're, just chucking it up with, 20, more than 10 seconds left on the shot clock when you have a lead. It's like at the worst case scenario, you run the shot clock down, you miss a shot, but they're going to run out of time. Just play the clock game, just like football, a 2-minute warning, just basically you're kneeling the ball in the basketball version of it. Like just let that clock bleed and don't do anything. I mean, take a violation for all I care. Just run that 35 seconds off.
Yeah. I just did not understand it at all. And they did get some looks later that would have helped him, either tie or stay or maybe win the game still, and they didn't do it. But I also will say, too, that there were a couple of shots that Florida made that were just absolutely stupid. Like, nobody makes that shot. Like, that turnaround 3 at the top of the key by Clayton, like, what the hell do you do with that? Like, nobody's defending that. You can't.
I was just gonna say that damn Clayton, like he had like a little, like maybe like an 8-foot little floater jump shot, and now he decides to dribble back out and just jack it up from 3 and freaking that was the shot. I was like, Florida's gonna win. Like you just tell one of those things, and even the other guard that was hitting on his name escapes me right now, but he was just like, I mean they weren't like great. I mean they weren't. I wouldn't say it was like the toughest shots ever, but they were, I mean, somewhat contested of a 3. But he was just, they were just they wanted the ball. I mean, they wanted to win. It was obvious. Like they weren't scared of the moment. They said, "Give me the ball and I'm going to make it." And that's literally what they did. Like I know kind of shooters, especially, kind of get in that mode where you're like, you just feel like you can't miss. Like I mean, and in that case, the guys that were shooting it for them, you'd much rather have them miss than somebody else. At least go if you're going to go down, go with your best players. So, I mean, they did what they freaking. I mean, oh, I don't know if it's Haug or Hogue or whatever his name is. That's the dude that was drilling him. Haugh. I don't know.
Not even a starter,
he was. I mean, he was 4 or 6 from 3. So I mean, there you go. It says, and I think he probably made 3 of those in the last minute or so. At least 2 of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I just unbelievable. And I felt. On one hand, I felt bad for Tech because of those kind of things, but at the same time, like those things that you saw earlier, just not being smart. I mean, you just absolutely shot yourself in the foot. And there was a point too where I kind of was wondering, like, are they going to take a timeout and talk about this crap? Like, at some point, you got to realize that you know what's going on here. Like, you didn't. I'm sure they never thought that they were going to lose, but when it gets inching to you a little bit and you kind of get that momentum feeling, you got to at some point be like, guys, okay, let's use all the clock we can. Let's play smart. Try to get a look. Get it to this guy or this guy. Give him a chance. Has to be kicked out. Let's do that. But it just felt like they never had any organization there down the stretch, and it obviously totally cost them at the end of the game.
Well, even outside of like the ill-advised jumpers, it was like kind of just like let's get to the post one-on-one and like some fadeaway hook with like that was hotly contested. It's like let's chuck that up and hope it goes in. That didn't seem like a good game plan either. And maybe this is typical for them. And I haven't seen much of their games outside of the tournament. You obviously see way more Big 12 basketball than I do. But their coach to me seemed more concerned, giving the officials a piece of his mind than, kind of being with his team and getting involved with that. I mean, every time they went to commercial, I mean, he's literally like face to face with the guy. I was like, hey, this dude's gonna freaking get a tech here and blow it that way too. Because I mean, they don't usually, especially college officials, they like to be the star of the show. They don't typically give you that much of a leash or kind of, maybe once. And then they're like, okay, bro, like, do it again. I'm going to have to, lay the law down, so to speak. But he was given that, I guess that freedom maybe built up some, goodwill with them throughout the course of the game. But to me, it seemed like at that moment, you got to be more worried about strategy, kind of, getting whatever, saying whatever you got to say to your team to get them out of this, like, funk, this tailspin. Then, cussing out the ref, that doesn't seem like a good use of time, especially when it was obviously getting away from them and they ended up, kind of letting it slip through their fingers.
Yeah. As far as the wager is concerned, though, plus 7.5, fine there. Got that one, got that controlled. And then I also had the opposite end of that total with the Duke Blue Devils later on in the night. I had them at the minus 7.5 mark. I know. Let's see. I know it didn't get there with the total. You were looking for that total to get a little higher, and that didn't happen. But as far as Duke winning, there were 7.5 was the line that they were given, and you kind of got the feeling early in that one that Duke was just gonna, I don't know, keep them at arm's length. Every time Alabama got within like 6, they'd hit a shot back to push it back out to 8. They get another one to make it 10 again. It just felt like it always kept them at arm's length, and there was no way that they were going to lose. So that was I felt like just a steady performance from the Blue Devils to get to the next round.
Yeah, I wasn't surprised that they won by that margin, but kind of holding Alabama to 65 was pretty impressive considering. And that's why I went. I think it was 174.5 is what we're trying to get to. It's like that. Honestly, the way would they have 100 the game? I know it's a different competition, but you score 100 no matter what. Like in college and in the tournament, like you would think you could hit 80 and at least or 75 even. Whatever. Then we're in good shape there. So yeah, that to me that was more surprise. It's not the fact that Duke won. It was that they held, and then of course you end up winning by 20 when you hold them that low. But it was more that I guess defensive effort, if you want to call it that. It means what Sears didn't score for the first 15 minutes or something.
Yeah.
They even get on the board, and I was like, when that was happening, you knew that they were in trouble at that point.
Yeah, for sure. And then we kind of went middle of the road again in the rest of the day. Because we were on right end of one and then, the weekend, and right into the one and the wrong end of the other. Houston obviously controlled the game against Tennessee. That was just an absolute beatdown. 69-50 was the final. We were both on Houston there. They were only laying 2.5, so you never felt bad about that one. That was pretty much a lock there from the get-go. They took, I don't know what, they jumped out to it seemed like about 11, 13-point lead almost right away. And there's just no chance that Tennessee was going to be in the game. And then in the nightcap, Michigan State was hanging around. You're on them there to, within that 4.5, but they didn't quite keep it there. Obviously, there's things happen at the end of the games always that you're like, oh man, this here, that there. But Auburn just made some good plays down the stretch, and obviously. There was a little bit of that emotional momentum that helped him out too, with Broome leaving the game, coming back. Things like that always give your team a little bit of an extra, or the crowd at least, get back into it a little bit. And it just seemed like no matter what Michigan State was throwing out there, it wasn't going to be enough. I just had that feeling the whole time. Like, yeah, they're going to make some shots and maybe get this thing interesting, but you just never felt like they had enough to win the game.
Yeah, and I was honestly surprised that they actually made that deep of a run in the tournament. I just wasn't really that sold on them all season for the fact that they weren't like that explosive, athletic team that you used to see. And I don't think, because typically a lot of times when they've been good or made a run like deep, it's kind of like the guards take over in the tournament. That's when they kind of showcase, and it's the opposite. Like no one can stop them. They're just making play after play, whether it's a shot or maybe an incredible pass or a steal and a layup, something like that. But I mean, how many times did Auburn just drive to the hoop like untouched? I mean, just like why just for dunks? Like if you're getting dunks in the half court, that I mean, pretty much you're not going to do anything to overcome that on the other side of the ball. And I mean that the one player that got injured, that's the type of guy, like not necessarily how he looks or like the type of, but when that's the guy's got to carry his birth certificate around with him all the time. It's like, dude, you look like you're like 40. Like I have to check where your birth date is. But either way, like I mean, he's still a good player. I'm not taking that away from him. It's just like that dude does not look like he's 20 years old, but or 20 whatever, 20 something whatever. But either way, not. And then in the first game, I was kind of joking around, just talking a little trash because who I was watching with was pulling for I was for Houston, and they were on the opposite end of it, and I was just like, man, Tennessee's gonna be a blowout, and just joking around, and it's kept going. I was like, dude, maybe busting people's chops, just talking trash.
Yeah.
I was like, they'd score 5 or 6 right away, and I think it got up to like 11 or 12 before, or 13 maybe before Tennessee got on the board or something like that.
Yeah.
And then I was just like, crap, maybe this is going to be a blowout. I was mostly just BSing, but I was like, shoot, they just never got into the game. Like you said, it was just a freaking, and it's not like, usually when a team kind of gets a blowout, it's like, hit threes, got some, fast breaks. So they're just like getting layups, like off in the half court offense. Like, they were like, this kind of sounds stupid to say. And I was like, what are you talking about? But they're like, Houston's really good at tipping the ball out, and then you start watching. It's like, man, they do that. And one of the things too is like usually, I mean, if you're playing or you play basketball much, if you tip it out, usually you don't have much control of where it goes.
Yeah.
You just kind of smack it and hope somebody's there. But I don't think that's the case with them, because more times than not it went to their teammates. So you can't. There's nobody has that much luck, or they'd be involved in one of these scandals here we talk about with the point shaving, So now it's by design, and I mean I'm kind of I guess I didn't maybe was slept on there a little bit, but I like their style of play as well. I'd say it's similar to like how I was high on St. John's, just that physicality and just that ability to, like, maybe you're not shooting well or you don't have good shooters. Like, I mean, I'll take layups and dunks over I'm enjoy the 3-point ball just as much as anybody, but to me the risk reward is I mean, it doesn't take a genius like that. Give me that all day, and especially if you're going to play defense along with it. Like, to me, that's more of where it starts, is that defensive, not so much just like the ability to play defense, but like having that intensity and the effort. Like, to me, that's more of what makes a good defensive team. Is like, sure, you can, like, scheme something up, how Syracuse led to play the zone, and you get these teams with the 1-through-1 traps and things like that. But I'm talking about someone that can, like, get up in your ass and play mano a mano, me and you, and just stop you. Like, that's defense to me, and that they can do it. That's why I mean, not to get too much, we'll talk about whenever we get to it, but I like their chances of playing like that.
They play the real Bill Raftery man-to-man, so to speak.
Yeah.
And I will say, I mean, if you would have asked me before the tournament too, I probably would have said this. If there's one team that has the best ability to overcome a bad offensive day, it's Houston, because of the way that they just scrap. They get after you. They're tough. They play awesome defense, like you said, with that effort that's always there. They seem like they got a good mixture of the type of athletic guys you need to play good, solid defense, and they do that, and they show that. I mean, you hold a team to 50 points in a friggin' Elite Eight game, you're doing something right. Like, that's a really good team. So, they're solid when they're playing their best, and I think that was about the best that they'd played in the tournament so far. So that is a good sign for them for sure. Interesting. We come up a little bit short on that late one, and I was looking for the total too, and that was short in that Auburn Michigan State game. So that's the way it goes sometimes, but not bad. Not a little bit better over the weekend as compared to before that. So some good basketball. So that sets up our Final Four. Obviously, we're going to get more into that here in just a little bit, but you've got all the 1 seeds: Auburn, Florida, and then Duke, Houston, in the 2 games that'll be coming up on Saturday, April the 5th. By the way, if you're planning your day out, it'll be 5:09 p.m. for first tip on the first game, and then 7:49 for the second. And then, of course, like we do with every other sport, we ruin it by playing a championship game on a night that nobody cares about. But Monday night will be the title game at 7:50 in the evening. So, sorry, kids, go to bed. You don't get to watch the end of the game. That's how we plan these things.
I'm actually glad that it's a little bit later, though. At least on Monday night. What was it? Wasn't it like 6:30 or 6 o'clock for the football game? Like it was early.
It was early, yeah.
Yeah. So I was like, at least 8 o'clock. That gives you time to, whatever you got practices, you got games, you got maybe a basketball league on Monday night. You can play and get home and still watch the game and enjoy it. That's where the the DVR can come in handy. You can still watch most of it and not have to like skip half or whatever. So when the halftime's gonna be elongated, so it'll give you plenty of time to catch up on that record.
Yep, for sure. So that's we got there. We'll get to how we're feeling about those games here in just a little while. A couple other topics related to the basketball world. The first one, you kind of had brought up this up to me before we started going here, SJ. Kind of an odd flex that you saw.
Yeah, it was in the women's game, so we were watching those games too, and I even had a couple good plays there. If anybody cares to dabble in that, so that I honestly felt kind of a little bit more accomplished with those because don't know as much, admittedly, but it was just interesting how from TCU Haley Van Lith, I believe is the pronunciation. It could be Van Leith. I apologize. No, but it was just. And I don't even remember who first put it out, but it was passed along along the social medias all over the place. But it was just kind of a thing of saying, this is a lot of times you see like Patino was the big story, was his sixth team he took to the tournament, and Calipari's had several teams he's taken. So Arkansas was his latest, and this thing was that this was the third team, and I believe it was to the Sweet 16 was the accomplishment, right? So the third team she's played in the Sweet 16 with, and I was like, okay, and then all that the first see that, and you're like, oh, that's pretty cool, and then you think about it like. How is that even possible? And then, of course, transfer stuff comes in and all that. And I don't even think it's a bad thing. It's just like and I'm not saying, negative or positive. It's just very, kind of how in some cases it's like, okay, is this worth, like, is this is okay to be like, yeah, this is good. Let's prop this up. Or other players like, oh, that player is selfish or the coach, So that was more the point of it. It's not like to call out one player or say it's anything wrong or good. It's just like, it's always interesting in these cases, like your perspective basically kind of frames if it's like, oh, this is something we should celebrate, or if we should be like, that guy's selfish, or that she's selfish, or how to frame it. So that was more of the crux of the thought I had. It was just like, it's interesting just how you perceive certain things, because it's all the same when you come down to it. It's either you transfer or you stay, either you take a new job or you stay at your job. But it's sometimes we give a little bit more, I guess if we like the person, quote unquote, like, even though we don't know them, if we like them, then it's okay. But if we don't, for whatever reason, then they're, they're the villain and they're always seen as the bad guys. So that was kind of interesting. A couple of the coaches I brought up too, especially like Calipari, he's always been kind of the villain, and by his own doing to some extent. But it's just always kind of that's more of it when I think to see these things like that. It's just interesting how they're disseminated and how we receive it, I guess, and it's up to, and like I said, right or wrong, that's up to you, I guess, as I make that comment. But it's still, I think if we're gonna do it, we need. To me, it should be, if it's good for one, it's good for the other.
Yep.
Bad for one, it's bad for everybody. That's the way I look at it. Maybe that you don't agree with that either, but to me, I don't see how it's any different for one as the other.
Mm-hmm. I saw that exact graphic, at least related graphic that you're talking about yesterday, or no, maybe it was early. It was early today because they played last night. Yeah, it was early today. So a couple of things struck me right away. One was, of course, like, okay, this is interesting because this is the new world we're in, like this has not obviously been possible before. But now we're saying this is like some sort of accomplishment. Like nobody else has been able to do it. Like somebody else could have, maybe, who knows? But the whole idea too that her second move, obviously, I think by a lot of people was criticized a little bit as like, oh, you're chasing the titles
Marine.
kind of
Not
thing.
sure just gonna, yeah.
Yeah, you're going to LSU because you know other players are there and you got a chance to make a run. And obviously they got all the way to the end, didn't get it done. So that was kind of interesting to me. And then the other, I guess maybe two more points, but the other one was that they mentioned this is the fifth. She's made 5 Elite Eights. I was like, okay, here's another thing that's new in the world of college sports. Like, most people only can do that 4 times because that's all that was allowed. Like, this is, well, great. I mean, obviously, yeah, you're a good player and you're finding some good teams apparently because you're able to do this all the time. And that is a hell of an accomplishment for any program, let alone a player, to be able to do that. So that was interesting. And then also, the one thing that was mentioned in that little, list of accomplishments that I did think, well, maybe give her some credit here, was that was the first time TCU had ever made an Elite Eight. So that does say something. You went to a school and you helped them accomplish something they'd never done before. So that is a little bit of credit to you, I think, as a player there. But yeah, I mean, it brings up a lot of things. Like you said, whether it's right or wrong, I'm not here to say that one way or the other I feel real strongly about it, but it is just kind of one of those things where it's like this is a unique thing because it's not been able to be done before. So I don't know, okay, they're facts, but are we raising a banner for this or what are we doing? Like it's just kind of weird.
Yeah, it's like when you have events now, it's like this is the most streamed event ever. It's like, well, yeah, because streaming just started like, a handful of years ago or whatever, anything like that. So it's not a judgment of, we're putting it down or building up, but it's like, well, you got to kind of, let some time pass before we start, saying this is, and even thing like part of me, like as someone that, played sports and been on teams, like, like of course, situations like we say, happen and coach leaves or something out of the ordinary, but in most cases a person that changes teams that much is probably there's probably not the circumstances that would be like, oh, okay, I understand that many times.
Yeah.
I mean, unless it's there's a rare case here and there, but that does, I mean, transferring that much in that short of a window doesn't usually allow for like the abnormal reasons that you could understand, like an injury, coach leaves, maybe there was some, off the court issues, that they couldn't control, that it doesn't usually happen in that short of a window. So to me, as like someone like looking as like, oh, would I want that as a teammate, male or female? Probably not. So I mean, I guess I think that is part of the discussion as well.
Yeah. I think let's not fool ourselves. The majority of average fans would look at a situation like that and be like, oh, well, that seems like a selfish person to me. Kind of, that's what the reaction that most people are going to give you. Whether that's right or wrong, we don't know all the reasons and whatever, but that's how people are going to perceive that for sure.
Well, and if that individual is, happy with their decisions to do that and you can live with what they did, then
yeah,
I mean that's all. I mean that's their life. That's what they chose to do, and that's their career, and they're gonna have to kind of live with those decisions. But yeah, it's you can understand both sides of that viewpoint, at least in this case.
I think it will be interesting down the road to once some of these guys are out, guys and gals are outside of this world. When they go back, a few years later and start to do some of those, reminisce interviews, how much will come out about like people regretting those types of decisions and, oh, I shouldn't have done that, or I shouldn't have left for the money here, or, all those things. That's going to be an interesting, story to tell, I think, at some point, for a lot of these people, because obviously that's going to be true. Not everything always works out the way that we intend it to. So there'll be a lot of those people that feel that way, I'm sure.
Well, I'm kind of half joking, but also a little serious. Like, I mean, what do you say you're like an alum to? Like, what school you, when you, and not even just like, oh, we had the alumni game, whatever, blah, blah, blah. But like when you're actually like, everyone, the cool thing people like is when they freaking do the intros on Sunday Night Football and they say whatever school. And of course, a lot of the guys have to, say some obnoxious or be like, I'm from School of Hard Knocks or some dumb shit like that. So like in literal sense, like where do you really say like I guess maybe your last school, maybe the school you had, had the best relationship with the coach, but that will be kind of interesting to see like where some of these people that have been to 4 and 5 schools, like where would they consider themselves an alum of, like what were they alumni of, like what school, like maybe they say all of them. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, and I guess to me, that is a little bit of this whole, the way that this all is working now, that does take away from from some of the best aspects of college athletics. Like everybody loves tradition. Like we love tradition. So you get those, especially when we used to have those guys that you grew to know over 4 years. They grew with the program. You knew they weren't leaving. Like it never probably even crossed most of these guys, minds that they will, I guess even if they had a bad year and wanted to, they knew that it was too difficult to try to make a change. So they're just going to stick it out and try to get better. So that was always fun to see guys grow. And then you had a lot of guys that were super loyal, like even after that. I mean, and that's been one of the biggest things for the team that I follow. They have had some recent success with some guys that have made names for themselves in the professional ranks, both in the NFL and the NBA. And they talk about their relationship a lot with Iowa State, and that's good for the university. I mean, you love to have those connections and that kind of exposure, and it's fun to see them come back and enjoy a game or whatever. So yeah, how do you get that now? It probably doesn't happen near as much. You're going to get it's still some random cases of that here and there, but it's just not going to be the same. And I think that is a little bit of a loss from a fan's perspective for sure.
Well, then just from also, I mean, a player's perspective too, when you factor in like, even though there's there's money be thrown about and the opportunity to play in some cases is enough to draw you away, but can you imagine how hard it'd be to like just leave like the people that you form bonds with on the team, your friends, your roommates, people you live with? I mean, that's still got to be a hard, no matter how much money's on the table. You got to kind of, I mean, just think of how many people like listen to this, or like, I mean, we met in college, that's how if we would have transferred after 1 year, we never would have known each other. Yeah. So I mean, there's things like that, like just in every regular people, let alone athletes. Because can you imagine the what you go through is like training for a season. Before anybody's there, you stay on campus all year when everybody goes home or does whatever, parties all summer while you're still working out or whatever, and then just there's got to be some type of bond bigger than just like your typical friendship that's built there. And then just to be like, that's got to be hard too, just because those relationships, that's kind of where you start forming like a type of like a serious like connection, not just like we're in the same class or we live on the same street, so you knew each other in elementary or high school. Like then you actually start to like know somebody as a person. So that can't be easy on top of all that to know, regardless of whatever type of compensation or whatever situation you're moving into.
Yeah, well, yeah, and like you alluded to, the sheer amount of time that these guys spend with each other, because they're doing this stuff all the time, all year round. So yeah, you're going to form connections, and that is interesting too. I when you see that after a guy leaves, you always see the other guys like, oh, love my guy, wish you the best luck, like that's true, but you also know that there's part of them. It's like, damn it, like why the hell are you doing, why are you leaving me, bro?
A little betrayal there, like a little, and even it's not like in a like a what do you call it, like a menacing sense, but you do probably gotta feel a little bit betrayed, or like kind of feel like, man, I thought we were in this together for the long haul, and it doesn't. That's not the case.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know. Obviously, it's very new, and we're all figuring out how it all works. But and I think that relates to. I don't want to harp on this forever, but I do think that relates also just to a lot of life in general. Like I was part, both of us got into a business and an industry when we got out of school that was very focused on, probably having to jump around a lot to be, if you want to climb a ladder and be successful, and you just got to keep, kind of be uncomfortable, in your seat or whatever. And I guess I found out fairly quickly for myself, it was pretty hard for myself to convince that I should, follow that path. Like, I don't know. I'm not one that wants to get up and move everything again after I've sat down for 6 months. Like, it just feels so unsettling to me as a person. I know some other people that doesn't bother them. They don't. That's how they thrive on that kind of stuff. And maybe that's the difference between some of these athletes too. But I just think that's an interesting, I guess, correlation to just life in general. The types of people that are okay with that, and those that are maybe a little bit more like, I'd rather be settled and be a little bit more comfortable in my life for a while.
Well, the thing too is like, well, where's the payoff too when you're seeing it?
Yeah.
On the in the front of things, it's like, well, okay, it's worth the risk here, but it's like, well, move here for 30K, and then maybe in a couple years you move for 35, and then 40, and then maybe one day you'll be able to eat 3 meals a day. So it's all different type of perspective. So it'd be a little easier to jump when they're giving you
Yeah, that's true.
a couple hundred, a couple 100,000 there. So that is factoring as well. So but yeah, no, it's always interesting, and like the lifestyle you want to kind of dictates a lot of those decisions. Do you want to? It's pretty hard to be moving every year or so, especially when you start in the business. If you want to, have a family or have anybody, care about other people's, because I mean, maybe you have a job, but if you're married or in a relationship with someone like this, it's not easy to find a job that quick in most cases, no matter what type of field you're in.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. Maybe I'm way off here. These guys are getting so much money. They don't care. They don't give a shit about it.
Well, I mean, but the kind of point is like get it while you can, because it might not always be there. Yeah. It's kind of what I'm looking at, because I'm like, so if like, who knows? What depends on, well, what kind of degree they're getting, and they ambition beyond the sports field, because a lot of times that's not denigrating anybody or say anything bad, but a lot of times that's kind of where some people peak, is once the game ends, it gets a little tricky. And I mean, I know a lot of people had fun with it, and kind of it seemed kind of cheesy and cliche that, what was it, the commercial where not all of us go pro and something other, or so most of us go pro in something other than sports. Yeah. It was like an NCAA, but I mean I mean there was truth to it, so it's kind of like, I don't know if it maybe was delivered the best way, and they kind of made it a little too cheesy to be taken seriously. But I mean, even Enterprise had like a thing where they're basically recruiting like former athletes to like be their employees, because they wanted that mindset of a competitive and someone like that. But I mean, it's not like anybody does, everybody knows it's like, what is it, like 1% or less than that make it pro in most sports. So I mean, I say get the money when you can, and be smart with it though too. Don't be going in. Don't be going and throwing parties every weekend or buying a tiger.
Yeah, no kidding. That is very true. And aside from the fact, I guess that you mentioned a degree, like you're jumping around to 4 schools. I can't imagine that part of it's very easy either. Like you got to stay on some kind of academic track here, and God knows what school has what to offer compared to the other one you were at. So obviously they have people that take care of that stuff for them. But yeah, that's a whole nother deal. So weird world. I don't know. We'll see a lot of changes coming down. I do think that this at some point is still gonna not necessarily totally change or course correct or whatever, but I do think there'll be some balancing out at some point where guys are not going to do as much jumping around as they do, and I think a lot of schools are going to change on how they maybe have to approach this too here down the road. That does lead us into the next thing I was going to bring up anyways, because it relates directly to how this portal window works. But I don't know if many of you saw it, and I'm sure a lot of you did. There was a reporter in a press conference that asked Tom Izzo a question about the transfer portal, and obviously he was getting ready for the Sweet 16 and Elite 8, and he wasn't really concerned about what's going on. So he ended up going on a little bit of a rant, because I think it kind of it irked him a little bit that somebody would be asking him that at that point, which I get to an extent. And then he made a point too that I thought was probably mostly valid. He's like, why am I gonna put my energy and time into thinking about that right now, when I'm just trying to give my best to the guys that are here to try to get them to win these games? I mean, that's our goal, is to win all these games and try to win a national championship. And he's like, I don't know. I can sit here and I can speculate, but I don't know who's going to be here at the end of the day. Some guys might be leaving, some guys might be staying. So why would I put time into that? So it was an interesting rant. Brought up a lot of, I think, different topics and different perspectives. I think we both have a little bit perspectives on it. But I thought there was some value in what he was saying as far as why would I put my energy into this at this point. But there is another side of that to that scenario too.
Oh yeah, and then I mean, I think the timing of it seemed kind of odd, but then you got to think like, well, does he have a lot of availability, especially at this time? Maybe the people that, and I don't know who asked the question. I don't know if it was a local reporter, if it was a national guy, maybe it was someone working for a campus thing, like, so they maybe only talk to him once or twice a year. Who knows? So that has to be in perspective, and then also it's like, Well, now after the dust is settled, a couple of players have left the team. So you got to think, well, maybe he had. I mean, of course, he had some type of a notion that somebody could leave. Of course, just in general, I think every
Yeah.
coach probably thinks that now. So we'll probably lose a guy or two, no matter what we do, unless it's like the guy that's on the top of your payroll and he's going to stay, because you're going to make it worth his while. So, but with the guys leaving, it's like, well, maybe that anger is kind of coming from there, and it makes you wonder how they played. Maybe the guys
Yeah.
were they're a little bit checked out, maybe, or thinking about the next move. That could have been part of it too. But I don't know. Sometimes I understand the frustration, but sometimes it's almost like they're just like, here, no, I'm not even gonna say a softball. Here's a beach ball, and we're gonna put on this tee for you. I'm gonna ask you about the transfer because I want a
Yeah.
soundbite, I want a reaction. These old parts are just gonna go crazy and say, "Damn kids, what's fit yells at the clouds."
Yeah.
That's kind of how I feel when any of these guys go on a rant anymore. I know you're the Simpsons, aficionado out here, and then that's what I think of the friggin' Grandpa Simpson,
Yeah.
yelling at the clouds. That's all I can think because it's like. I get that it's like difficult and it's a tough situation, but it's like, damn, dude, this kid might get. Oh, let's say we'll get exact. I mean, I don't think very many. I'm sure there's a few are getting $1 million, bro. You're getting 10, 20 times that.
Yeah.
Figure it out.
Yeah.
Like, shut up. I mean, you're saying everyone, you're supposed to be the generation that is resourceful, figures it out, pulls up by your bootstraps. I think that was the phrase they like to say. Well, fucking do it then.
Yeah.
Figure it out.
Yeah, I see that side of it too. I don't totally disagree there as well. I did think, like you said, the timing obviously I think is unfortunate, but I guess the other point is this is also a reflection of how inept the NCAA became, because we shouldn't have this problem if they just had the balls to make some rules. And to me, it would just be the portal doesn't open until the tournament's over. Like, okay, there's still going to be news. I get that. Every kid's going to get on Twitter and Instagram and still say,
all the news,
yeah,
quote unquote news outlets,
yeah,
these recruiting websites. There's always going to be rumors. There's always going to be, I heard this. The thing now is either put friggin' breaking in all caps or you put sources in
yeah.
all caps, and then that's the tweet you want, right? That's how we do it. So there's always going to be that. So, and when you talk about the NCAA, it's funny how this was, they didn't want to, put some, bylaws on this. But if you look at everything else that they used to, kind of keep their fingers on their hands, and you couldn't buy a kid a cheeseburger without getting a
Yeah,
violation.
yeah,
But now they're not worried about giving them $100,000.
yeah, yeah, and you're not
I
worried
mean,
about,
it's with the opposite. Yeah.
yeah,
So
yeah,
I'm that's we've even though we're in support of like, some type of compensation for your efforts, there has to be, no matter everything, there's got to be guidelines. Like,
yeah.
I don't think anybody thinks it should just be the way it is right now.
Yeah, yeah, because nobody knows. Like it's just like you alluded to when we were talking beforehand. It's just like throw your hands up, like, oh, well, not my problem. Go ask somebody else. Make your own decisions. That way, it doesn't reflect on me poorly because we didn't say anything. But yeah, I mean, I guess at least if you say that the portal isn't officially open until the tournament is over, we've crowned a national championship, season's over. Just like any other sport, that starts to happen in the NFL the day after the Super Bowl. Now we start talking about what coach is going where and what players are on free agency, what talks they start to have. That's fine. Start it then. Allow kids to officially put their name into the portal at that point. I realize, again, yeah, the news is going to come out. Kids are going to say their own things on the teams that have already lost. That people are already leaving or looking, whatever. There's still going to be those conversations in the background with every team, even the ones that probably are still playing. They've got some guy on the staff, whose job is to monitors, hell, you got general managers now of teams, basically.
Yeah.
So that's their job.
More than most of the coaches besides the head coach. I
Yeah.
mean, honestly, you got somebody that's pulling in $1 million salaries.
Yeah, yeah. So let them handle that shit. That's fine. They can do that still behind the scenes, but don't make it official until the tournament is actually over. And then that way it does give the coaches a little bit of a, something to say, like lean on, like, well, I'm not supposed to worry about that until this date. And then that's all you have to say. When somebody asks you that question, I'm not going to answer that until that date. That's fine. And then that way it works a little bit smoother. I mean, yeah, all those things are still going to happen behind the scenes and whatever. But at least you've got some sort of a better flow to how this works. And we can focus on the actual basketball when you're supposed to focus on it.
Yeah, I can't remember how they term it, but NFL says something like the official. What do they say? Like the official season starts whatever this date or the start of the new calendar. Well, they term it some way, and I was like, it's a similar way. Just whatever sport it is. We're talking about basketball here, but you wait till the tournament ends. You give them a 2-3 weeks, even a month. Give them a month window. And then that's when all your transferring goes down. That's right. And then after that, that's it. It's done. Same thing with football. When they get done with the playoff, you give them 2-3 weeks, a month, whatever, and then there's your transfer window. And then after that, it's done dealing, unless there's some type of an extenuating circumstance where, like we've seen in the last couple of days, Maryland's coach goes to Villanova, then A&M's coach goes to Maryland,
Yeah.
and now someone's got to go to A. So we see a little bit. Then in that case, of course, in this instance, the way we propose it, the window wouldn't be open yet, so you'd still be fine.
Yeah.
And then once this, after what we get Tuesday at 12:01 a.m.
Yeah.
After the game, then next week, then you can start with your moving or whatever, if he wants to take some players with him or whatever the case may be. But yeah, you got to have, and that doesn't even seem like that might not be the best idea, but at least it's a freaking idea. Like, at least, you know what I mean? Like, we came up with that, a couple minutes here. Like, it shouldn't be that difficult to use some common sense and just put something together that most people could understand. And of course, there's always going to be someone like, well, what about this? What about this? Like, bro, this is what we're doing.
Yeah.
This is what we're doing. Like, whether it be that or something else, you just have to have something concrete. But this is the way it is.
Yeah, and I'm sure there is no perfect scenario. Just like nothing ever has been. That's fine. You're not going to please everybody, just like anything in life. But let's figure something out.
Exactly. I mean, I want to drive 90, but it says I can only drive 65. So I mean, but I gotta, if I want to go 90, that's my choice, and I got to deal with the consequences.
Exactly.
So,
yeah. So, the other thing that we kind of, I guess, alluded to here that is kind of a background nugget of this is how much at some point, how much of this does that just change coaching in general? Because they're asking that question of Tom Izzo. At some point, does he have less influence on, like we talked about, their general managers? Like, maybe he has less influence at some point on who the actual players are.
At Stanford, they're letting the general manager fire the head coach.
Yeah.
And Andrew Luck comes in as the general manager, and like within a month's time or so, they got a new coach, and they're going an interim for a whole season, with his former coach Frank Reich. So, or I guess Colts, he was the Colts coach. I don't know if they overlapped or not. Maybe they didn't overlap. But either way, it's like, man, I don't know. It seems to me a little bit. I get that he's got probably more of a football background than most of these general managers, having played the game and that type of thing. But you're really kind of giving one person a lot of power there, it seems like to me.
Yeah. But I don't know. I mean, I just think the way that we're setting this up, you're changing the whole dynamic of how a team works. And obviously, like, the whole traditional recruiting thing is out the window. Like, that's not a thing anymore. So at some point, how much does it become more of like a collaborative effort, and the head coach isn't necessarily always going to have, the full final word say or whatever? It's got to be more of a collective effort type of thing. I think that at some point that probably changes for a lot of schools.
I mean, football specific here, but I do think that 105 roster limit will curtail quite a bit of the transfer, because it's like we only have so many spots now. Do we want you're going to really have to be worthy of a second chance in some of these cases where you don't have the space to just have guys hanging on your roster hoping the light bulb will turn on here in a year or two. Like, there's that kind of speeds it up. So I think that was one way of them kind of like doing something to like cut down this transfer and this NIL deal without like being on the forefront about it and being like, we got to do something about this. There's kind of like a passive aggressive way, if you will, to cut down on the the attractiveness of transferring.
Yeah. While we're on this subject, I had to bring this up because I got a good laugh out of this earlier. One of my buddies sent this, a little group text that we always have going, and it's mostly just interesting sports shit that gets brought up a lot of times. And there was a story that was put out here today about this particular player, Michi Johnson, who has transferred from Ohio State to South Carolina. That's after he had previously transferred from South Carolina to Ohio State. So we've come full circle. He literally transferred to one school and back then to the other school again. Like, this probably isn't the first instance that this has happened. I'm sure not, but like just directly between two programs, that's pretty intriguing to me. Like, because well, hell, even the school that I follow, there was a kid that did that, and then he ended up in Missouri this last 2 years. But he was more so like following the coach. Like the coach had left as he was an assistant that recruited him, was a head coach somewhere else, and then came back to the program. So I think that's a little bit of a different scenario. But it's just pretty funny when you see that type of headline and you just think to yourself, like, what would 10 year ago sports fan thought of this scenario? It's just absolutely wild. But hey, whatever. I mean, maybe he realized his mistake. I don't know. That's fine. We all have choices now, I guess.
Those winters were a little bit tough there, so we wanted to get back to the more of a warmer climate there. So I guess that was we'll go with that one. But yeah, I think there's a lot more of those instances. But I guess same thing until they do anything to stop it, and
yeah,
it's totally above, but totally legal. So
it is what it is here at this point. All right, so before we dive into the basketball games, just give you a little preview. We're not going to get too deep into the Final Four because we'll put out another video for you before that time comes as far as some picks are concerned. So we'll go a little deeper then. But the more important bracket here, let's get to the Parched Madness. Here, round of Sweet 16. Obviously, we had a pretty good first round of 32. There were a couple upsets, a couple of surprises along the way. And I'm probably going to give you a couple more here as we move through this Sweet 16. So we put it out there, obviously, the beverages that advanced in each region. So what we've got is those two games in each of the regions. So we set it up so that there were two beer-specific regions, two cocktail-specific regions. So we'll start off with the hops region here. And this is... So all the folks that got on, we appreciate, again, a number of you did, got on and voted for your favorite beverages to move on here in this Parched Madness bracket. And there was a good battle here between the 1 and the 5. And again, I am surprised. I don't know if I have some kind of influence on people's decisions or what the hell's going on. They actually believe me.
We demanded a recount. He told me.
Maybe I turned people on to this. I don't know, because I'm a Kolsch guy. I love a good Kolsch. And it came dangerously close to knocking off the 1 seed, the Lager. 60% of the vote goes to the Lager. So we were just a hair off from that Kolsch pulling off the 5-1 upset. Didn't quite do it, but one hell of an effort. So, hats off to the Kolsch folks. They did their job trying to fight for the underdog, but didn't quite get it home.
That's actually kind of I'm glad to hear that, because I was wondering if the lager is ever going to get, because I mean, we talked before, there's just so many varieties, and it's kind of like the standard, it's like basically like the kind of the first popularized style of beer, at least in this country. So I'm glad they gave them a run for their money. Maybe that's a sign of things to come.
Yeah, true enough. So then we go to the and this is a good battle here. Then the next one in the hops region is the 3, the stout, against the 2, the wheat. And so, I mean, those are two pretty damn popular styles if you're getting down to brass tacks here. But the wheat is victorious by a fairly significant margin, actually. 80% of the vote comes in on the wheat. So, I don't know, SJ. That's an interesting battle there.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to look through those votes again, and I'm let down by that one. I was hoping you were gonna tell me that was the upset, because I definitely would probably lean more that way. But the people have spoken.
They sure have. So the wheat advances. So that's what we have there. We're gonna go now to the shaken not stirred region, and again, good battles here, but we didn't quite again get an upset. So. The Martini defeats the Bloody Mary with 60% of the vote. So again, razor thin for the Martini to advance. We did mention last time, I mean, so many varieties. That's hard to compete with when you got multiple types of drinks essentially battling one that's pretty standard. Except like you mentioned last time. I mean, hell, you can add a damn cheeseburger to the thing. So I don't know if we're counting.
The problem is you still gotta drink it. So it's like, I mean, if I can't do the tomato juice, bro. So like I'm out, and I'm not a vodka guy either. So it's like basically, I mean, I'm in that case. I'm with the martini. I'm with the majority this
There
time.
you go. Okay. So the next one, the 3-2 matchup was the mojito against the old fashioned. And the old fashioned does move on. 60% of the vote
Finally, some good
also
news
for the old fashioned. Yeah, I agree there. I mean that to me that makes sense. That one should be a winner there. So we get the 1-2 there out of the shaken not stirred region. So then we move on to the malt region, and the pale ale does very well against the amber. The pale ale 80% of the vote. So the 1 seed again survives and advances there with the pale ale. Now here's where
we never had this Dusseldorf version of the amber. Otherwise,
maybe
we'd
not.
be singing a different tune there. Yeah.
They didn't have the alt.
Yeah.
There you go. Good move there. This one we knew we were going to get a solid seed out because it was a 6-7 matchup here. So we knew we were going to get a good one out of this. So it was the 6, the Cerveza, against the 7, the Hefeweizen. And again, razor thin, but the Cerveza has advanced with 60% of the vote. So tip of the cap there to south of the border. The Cerveza gets the Hefeweizen.
You kind of got a version there going yourself tonight.
That's
so,
true,
yeah.
Yeah, not gonna lie. I do. I would say, yeah. I mean, when it comes down to volume, 100%, I'm drinking a hell of a lot more Cerveza than I am a Hefeweizen. I mean, I like the style, but yeah, it's not one you kind of put back, so to speak, I guess.
What I think it's also one of those drinks where it's like when you think about it, you're probably like it's probably a warm day, a nice day. Maybe you're on the beach. So I think that kind of like stays in your head more than like maybe if you're at like an Oktoberfest drinking a hef. Like it's not like it's bad. It's just like maybe that's like, oh man, I really love that. I love a nice Corona when I'm at the beach, or maybe in this case at a lake. I guess probably people more have access to a lake that
That's
are listening
true.
to this, but or just after that post lawn mowing beer, like
Oh yeah.
nothing hits like that. You get you get yourself a Dos Equis or Modelo or something. It's like here we go. Life is good.
Yep. Yeah. There's a reason there's a whole kind of style category created after lawnmower beers. That is 100% true. So then we go to the On the Rocks region. And, well, I mean, I don't know. I hate to give things away, but we are getting a little bit more like the real tournament now because we're getting a little chalky. We're getting a little chalky. This one I'm not shocked by, though. Like, this is what I think the vote should have happened. The margarita dominates the mimosa. I mean, not even a question here. Like 100% of the vote on the margarita for sure. Makes sense.
I mean, there's still drinks to be had, but that margarita that's a tough out, man. That's kind of like that Houston defense. That's going to be hard to beat.
Yeah, that's a good one. And then this is more of a battle here. I don't know. I guess I'm maybe a little bit surprised here that we didn't get the upset. But I agree with the majority, and this would probably, if there was going to be a controversy, this would be the matchup that's going to be it. But anyways, the Moscow Mule survives over the Whiskey Sour with 60% of the vote. The Mule advances on, and what's interesting, I think, in drinking culture is if you would have posed that question 10 years ago.
No way, no chance.
No chance. No, the
it's
Mule
that damn copper mug.
Yeah, that's what it is.
I don't know if you would throw that fucking mug. That's all it is.
I do have to say that I am a little bit of a sucker for a Mule these days. Like I don't know what it is. Well, I do know what it is. I know what it is because I love ginger. I love ginger. If you don't like ginger, you're not going to like a Moscow Mule. Like that's the thing. So I love the taste of fresh ginger, and then you add that little squirt of lime in there, and it's just such a fresh, like you can drink it almost any time, and again, it harkens back, I guess, to that hot summer day thing. It's still like kind of a good fit to that. The whiskey sour I get is very versatile. Like a lot of people love that drink. And if you would go on I don't know, if you went on a global tour of this question, the whiskey sour probably wins. But I don't know. I'm with the way that it went here in our bracket. So the Moscow Mule survives.
Well, I mean, I alluded to before the vodka. This kind of throws me off too, so I'm out on that one. But I know there's like the version with like tequila. I could do that. But I'm like whiskey is by far my favorite spirit, like far and away. I mean, whatever whiskey, bourbon, rye.
Gotcha.
in that
Yeah.
that's my so I'd be with the sour on this one, but I mean I could choke down a mule if I have to throw some tequila, but
Yeah.
that vodka, I'm out on that stuff.
That's a good point because I have seen some. There's been a lot of varieties lately of either you're talking tequila, rum. I've seen even gin as a mule. So, I mean, that's probably not officially a mule or whatever,
Right, yeah, yeah.
but yeah, I've seen varieties that use all that. So that maybe made that factors in a little bit there too. But interesting. Either way, I don't think it makes a damn bit of difference because they're going to get their ass whooped by the margarita. So whatever,
Good point. Yeah,
whatever.
yeah,
That's what we
if
got.
that loses, we're gonna have to get in touch with some people here because that will be worse. The Valvano will have nothing on the coach running around the court if they happen to pull if someone knocks them off.
So that's what we got there in Parched Madness in the Sweet 16. We will, of course, update the bracket for you and get that out on social media. And then, of course, we'll do the matchups. Now that we're down to the Elite Eight, what we'll probably do is put these questions out there for you on a one-by-one basis. Since we've only got a few games, we don't need to do the whole form thing probably for you again. So we'll just do straight responses probably online. So I'll put that together and put that out there for you. So check that out. Go follow us on socials. If you're a Twitter user, at SJMBets, at Cherokee CP, those are our handles. So make sure you are following there, and we'll get that put out there for you. And then, of course, we do share some stuff on some other platforms as well. So be on the lookout for it and just search around. You'll track it down. And then, of course, as far as that goes, we would love if you would just always follow along, and then, of course, like, subscribe, and get notifications on both the podcast feed, which is available everywhere, including our host at Spotify, and then, of course, the YouTube channel, which will have the podcast, and then also our picks videos that we put out for you regularly on that channel as well. So make sure you're checking all of that out. And we'll figure it out. We'll sort it out for Parched Madness. What is beverage number one? Now, as far as the games are concerned, just a little preview before we leave you. We should, I mean, theoretically, like we alluded to earlier, this is what should probably have happened according to the committee. We got all the one seeds, the top seeds are there. This should set up to be a really good Final Four. We should see some really high quality basketball. And I don't think that that's wrong. I think we are going to see some really good games here, especially the way that it kind of just shapes up. I would, if you would have told me that this would have been the case before the tournament started, I would have looked at that Auburn-Florida matchup and told you that Auburn's going to get it together and walk away with that game. Now, I know that's contrary to how it went earlier in the year, but I think this Auburn team's really good. Now, the fact that Janai Broome is a little bit banged up, maybe that does make it a little bit more interesting. I don't know. But I do feel like Florida, this whole tournament, has just been kind of teetering on the edge. We thought we were going to lose to UConn. They pulled it off. We absolutely thought they were losing last round at Tech. Somehow found a way to win. Now, maybe you look at that and tell me, well, that just means that they're finding ways to win. They're going to do it. I look at it and think that, at some point your luck's going to run out. And I think that's going to happen here. I just kind of am leaning towards Auburn, taking the advantage in that game and getting the win to move on. And my inkling on the other side of the bracket, and I think you might think differently than me here, SJ, and I think maybe I'm biased to what I picked, and I need to win some money out of this damn pool.
You gotta pay for those. You gotta pay for those margaritas.
Yeah, pay for those margaritas. So yeah, I obviously I was super impressed with the way Houston played last round, and I do think that they are an awesome team and 100% capable of winning this as well. I guess at this point, I think it's unfortunate that we're getting Duke Houston this game instead of the last one, which probably should be better. But I also have been very impressed with the way Duke has played. I just think the way that Duke is set up offensively, they have guys that fit the different positions so well, and they so far have seemed to play together so well. I mean, how many times have you seen Cooper Flagg, who is, arguably the most paid attention to player in the nation, but he's throwing up lobs underneath like 10 times a game. Like, they're not selfish. They're looking for each other. as far as, and I've seen this brought up a bunch of times too, as far as a Duke team goes, this may be the most likable Duke team that we've ever had. And you don't have that one guy that you just want to absolutely punch in the face, so to speak.
Might be the coach now.
Yeah, that's true.
But I mean, I guess that's always been the case for me. I never, he was always kind of the weasel that led the weasels. So
yeah. So I'm leaning Duke because of the offense. I think that they have more firepower there, and that's what gets them over the hump. But that's how I'm feeling about it. SJ, what's your initial thoughts here?
I mean, at first glance, I'm looking more at the total than anything because I'm with you. It sucks that they have to. Like, that's to me, that's the two best teams right there. But they had to get an SEC team in the final somehow, right after football. So I mean, I guess that's the only thing that makes sense to me why they would have put the bracket like this. So and then in the Florida matchup, at least, like, I mean, you like to see the 2.5 as a fan because you're like, well, it's probably going to be close. But as you know, looking at making a play later in the week here, that seems a little close. I don't like that either way. It just seems like there's that much, there's a bit of an uncertainty for the experts, the bookmakers, and so that makes me a little bit like, well, what are they seeing here? And I think 159.5 is what it is now. That even seems a little bit on the high end even for these teams. So we'll have to dig into that one. I don't know how that one's, and it's also kind of part of it to me is like I don't care who wins either one. I don't care for either team particularly. I don't want to hear these people blab about whatever the affiliation they think they have with each other. So like that part of that kind of takes my the keen eye out of it. But that Houston and Duke, I can see going either way. And for me, like Duke, it's like I know everyone talks about, like you said, flag, but I'm honest. I guess if you still call it a front court, that's what I would call it. Forwards and no one has centers. I get it, but that they're physical, so that would be a good matchup. Duke is a physical team. I don't remember them being maybe when they had like Elton Brand and like Battier. So we're going back a ways. I mean, that's about when I can remember them being like an actual like kind of like your traditional basketball like. Team that kind of, come, thou shalt not enter thy lane, that type of thing, bringing the pain. So, and that's the type of teams I like. Like, of course you got to score. I don't want the Detroit Pistons with Ben Wallace where it's 56-50. But you also, I mean, I don't want it to be, these prima donnas just chucking up half quarters and, dancing around and thinking that's basketball. So I do like the physicality of them. So I think that would be an interesting matchup because that does kind of play into what we think Houston's strength is. But they got to have to score points. Like they got to find a way. I think got to get to 70 and probably keep Duke under that mark. So that will be interesting. At least it's the second game, so we can get that crap out of the way and have the better teams playing in the nightcap there.
Yeah, should be fun. Hopefully both games are entertaining just for basketball's sake. That was the one interesting thing I guess I took away from this too is because we don't see this obviously very, very often. But, you got two sides of the argument. Is this good or bad for the game of basketball? Because on one hand, like I alluded to when we started, this is what it should be. Like you should have the best teams, right, playing at the end, and obviously, hopefully, you get the best result in what you feel like is the best possible champion at the end of the day. But also, the thrill and the allure of the tournament to the average fan has always been getting some other team in the mix and mixing it up with an underdog story, so to speak. And this year, even a 3 seed would have been that for, everybody to root for. So that takes a little bit of the edge off, I think, just a touch. But again, it's like we've said before in other relations to, overall feelings, it's a data point along the way of history. Like, it is one time that this has happened. Will this happen again next year? Probably not. But who knows? Hopefully, at the end of the day, like I said, we get some really good basketball and just some fun things to watch and be entertained. That's what we're here for as sports fans.
I mean, it's understandable, but I think just people get too caught up in like whatever a seed, this seed, that seed, because I mean, when it comes out, everyone's like, the committee's stupid. They don't know what they're talking about. And then by the next Thursday, we're like, oh, that's a 2 seed. That's a 4 seed. We're like, but when Sunday, when they come out, it's like, they don't know what they're talking about. But by the time the tournament starts, like, they knew this team, So I just look at, you got to look at it more like, are these based upon their games? Is this the 4 best teams? And you could probably make the case for 3 of them. I think Florida probably has like the least amount of like impressive wins, if you'll say that. But then again, I mean, a Connecticut as in a second round, that's not your typical 8-9 matchup there. So you got to factor that in as well. So I just got to look at the stuff, not necessarily like I guess what they win by, but how they won. Was it like a actual like Duke's win over Alabama, 20-point win? Like that's impressive.
Mm-hmm.
Even like Houston shutting down Tennessee, like okay, like that type of thing. Like you look at those games, you're like okay, well then obviously so it's more like are they the best teams? Not necessarily or because to me it's like I don't think all the number ones are always the best teams. We've seen 2 and 3 seeds who should have been higher. So just get off that number, but it's also impossible when you're doing a seeded bracket to like not bring it up. It just kind of comes with the territory. But just more about the body of work. But it's I guess it's you gotta blame some of that on the studio and the announcers, because that's pretty much what the first thing you say is a 2 seed, a 3 seed. That's over and over in your head as a as someone that's just watching the game, or maybe someone that doesn't have any background of it and just kind of tunes in once a year. It's like, well, if you keep saying it, it's gonna get repeated. I mean,
well, and it's not something that crosses your mind when you're watching the rest of the year. Some team in a lower part of the conference beats somebody else. You just think, oh, another tough game in the conference. You don't think that would have been a 12 seed. That's not what you think. So definitely isn't a unique part of the game. But hopefully we get some good games. Hope you enjoy it. Maybe have a few beverages along the way to help you enjoy it. If it doesn't go your way, then maybe you take care of that business instead and start voting on the Parched Madness instead of watching the ball game. That's fine.
If you're having trouble deciding, get a couple of the drinks and just back and forth there and see which one you finish first, or which one which one maybe puts you out, and that'll be a deciding factor.
There you go. It'll be up for you. Make sure you're following along again on Twitter at SJMBets, at Cherokee CP. Follow, like, subscribe, share the podcast everywhere, and then of course subscribe to the YouTube channel. Get those picks out for you, official plays also later on this week. That's going to do it for this time around here on Everyday We're Covering. That's SJ Munoz. I'm Chris Parks. Thanks for joining us for another week of Everyday We're Covering. We'll see you next time for some more covers.